Hello, welcome everyone to the Flux Dev Meeting, June 18th. Let's get started.
Yeah, hello everyone. So a little bit of recap what happened in the last 3 weeks. We had Flux 2.6 release, then we got reports around some regression bugs that we fixed, and also other issues around authentication to OCI repos, which weren't quite a fix. It was an improvement to a new feature that we shipped. So now you can work with uh, Amazon ECR public, both authenticated and not, when using source control or image reflector controller. But the good improvement here was that we've um, also enabled in the CLI. You can do Flux push artifact if you have public artifacts on ECR public, and now it can work from a VM inside AWS. Right, Mateus? You just need a special
Provider
uh,
AWS.
I am binding that we've documented. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you publish Flux artifacts on AWS now, you can also publish on the public ECR and share with others your Flux configuration.
Yes.
What we are doing next, we have started on the next milestone on the roadmap. We are working towards Flux 2.7, which should be released by the end of Q3. That means 1 week before November, something like that. Or let me check when is Q3, and that's Q3 and September. Okay. So by the end of September, we are going to release Flux 2.7. We've made some little progress towards it. But yeah, there is a long way. The goal with 2.7 is first to promote image automation to GA, which has the potential of breaking people's configuration. Last year we changed the templating of the commit message. So when image automation runs, you can have a template and write in the commit message all the changes that have happened, the files on disk, the name of the images, the actual resource names, like you see Helm release, pod info in the file, podinfo.yaml was updated with this from this old version to this new version. You can also print digests and so on. So in order to make the templating more dynamic, for example, listing digests and so on, we completely changed the templating format. So there are other expressions that you need to write in there and so on. And we've updated the docs like, I don't know, 8 months ago or something like that. Now for GA, we are going to remove the deprecated template format and stick to the new one only. So Mateus, we need to figure out how to error out. Maybe we can, I don't know, validate somehow the template. It's I don't think Cell can work with this because it's a Go template. It's really complicated to parse it and figure out, oh, it's using the old version. Unless you find some magic string in there, but still, with strings you can have that kind of string in a different part of the text, which is just pure text, is not templating. So I'm not sure how we can drop this and when we can bubble the error. If we do it at the last point where we actually compose the message, the bad thing about it is that we are going to fail the git commit. Right? We can't compile the message, that will error out, there will be a reconciliation error. So everyone's automations will basically stop. That's one option. Another option will be if we can't compile the template, we replace it with some basic message and we issue an error event, we log errors, but we keep running. So yeah, we don't need to decide today, but I think that's the main concern with image automation is around this templating, which is part of the public API, but is very hard. I don't think it's possible to validate with cell. That will be ideal, right?
Yeah.
You apply something, then you
Yeah.
get rejected, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Cell is not made to parse Go templates.
Yeah, another thing that I wanted to parse was like cron, but cron also does not parse itself.
Yeah. It's
Like, yeah, I mean, this is related to Flux operator, but like what we shipped is only validated asynchronously. You have to apply. If there's an error, you're only gonna see in the status. You don't have the error during admission. Well, it is what
but
it is.
wait a second, like Kubernetes cron jobs have crons, and maybe they added a cell extension for
Mm,
validated crons, right? So you
mm.
should be looking into. So what Kubernetes did was they took cell, the base library, and then they built their own extensions. For example, there is an extension in cell to verify RBAC rules. Cell does not know about RBAC. That's an extension in the Kubernetes cell package, and they have several of those. So yeah, maybe look in there. We could write our
Yeah,
own extension.
I can like easily test this by applying an invalid cron with cron job. Like I just speed
Yeah.
the cron job manifest and put a invalid cron syntax and test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 15 more minutes. Florian, do you want to say something?
Hello? Do you hear
Yep.
me?
Yep.
Good morning. That's my very first me time in a Fluxity meeting. Basically, I'm an end user of Fluxity for now 3 years in Quebec, in Canada, and we are currently managing deployments of Backstage, and we forked the plugin from Weaveworks, uh,
Mm.
and we are thinking of where to maybe transition the this project to give this project to the Backstage community, for example, or is it better to host first maybe this fork inside the Fluxity project? I don't know.
So we can't get any more projects into CNCF Flux. That's out of the question. But especially something that we have no knowledge or issue or time to maintain, like a Backstage plugin is not something that we'll ever accept. We are not using Backstage, so for us
Okay,
it's not something that we
understand.
can maintain. But there is a different org called Flux CD Community. I'm going to
Okay.
give you the link to it. So is this org here, which has various things that are not maintained or part of CNCF Flux, but are endorsed by the Flux maintainers. That means we only do code of conduct things and creating a structure for the community to contribute. Like we create a repo for you, we add you as a maintainer, we give you the rights to maintain the Backstage plugin, but it's not something that will be part of CNCF Flux. We are not going to offer any support for it and so on. It's up to you to maintain it as a community project. So that's one option. If you can get 1-2 maintainers for this yourself and another one to be able to approve pull requests and so on, we can talk on CNCF Flux about it, but I can create a repo for you. I can add you both as maintainers of the repo, then you can push all the code and so on. And once we have like a proper all the code is in there, it works, we can advertise it we can write, for example, a blog post on the Flux CD website. Hey, we have a Backstage plugin, show some nice print screens about it, point people to the repo, have some documentation in the docs on how to install this. I briefly looked at Backstage a long time ago, and it's not something that actually works. You need to do a bunch
No,
of
that's
stuff.
a framework. That's right.
Yeah, right. So the
Now,
installation docs will be it's important to have it like really good written.
okay, thank you. So
Do you
to communicate, what is the channel to communicate about this? It is around through an issue or Slack channel. Don't know.
so you can first create a discussion for visibility in the Flux 2 discussions. Let me give you the link to this as well. And open a discussion here. Say exactly what you told to us in the meeting. Propose that you would like to contribute this to the community, and then we can I can create the repo for you in Flux CD community, and
I'm thinking of it because we are already registered in the Backstage community repo, which has a lot of automation around types Node.js and the framework. So everything is pretty automated. So maybe it will be just maybe something we can just the marketing part maybe. It will be
okay.
reported.
So you are saying the Flux CD plugin does not have to live in the community organization. It can stay in the Backstage one where everything is set up with TypeScript and everything.
Yeah.
And what we would do in Flux CD, basically we would have to update the website where that actually simplifies things a lot. So besides the discussion, right, because there we will tell the world where it is, we can do a bunch of stuff. There is an ecosystem page and a section for Flux UIs.
Okay.
Where we can list here. So here is, I don't know, headlamp plugin, freelance extensions, VMware Tanzu, whatever. We can list here the Backstage plugin. Then you can write a blog post. So first we list the plugin there. Once you have it ready in the Backstage with a link to the README, I'm guessing in that repo you have a README how to install it and everything.
Yeah, sure.
And we can link it from the ecosystem page to that README. Then step 2, you can write a blog post, have some print screens, everything to, share with the Flux community how we do it. And once we have that blog post, then we can, the maintainers will take care of that, posting the blog post on Twitter, Slack, uh, Kubernetes, Discord, other channels. So the important thing will be writing a good blog post telling like Backstage users, hey, if you are a Backstage user and a Flux user, you can now use this plugin, is maintained by us. Here is the source code. Here are the instructions, some print screens, and I think that would be really
Okay.
great.
What we already
And
did internally in our clients, to our clients. Perfect.
awesome. That's
Okay.
awesome. Another thing here in the ecosystem page. So we kind of list the name of the plugin. You have the description there, link to the README, and you should also add the two print screens
Yeah,
to
I
the
saw that.
page. I mean, find something that looks good, right? With, I don't know, many hand releases, many customizations. So it's not just one. So people can figure out, okay, this actually would be useful for me. Yeah, but that's really awesome news. I know a lot of users from the Flux community had used the WeWork stuff that was dead at some point. So
Yeah.
it's really good to hear that we have a maintained Backstage plugin. It's great. And I definitely think it's the best way to have it in Backstage, just around CI and everything, right? I mean, we have zero TypeScript in the Flux CD org and
I
everywhere.
understand.
So that will be for us a huge work just to set up. Yeah, what's CI, how we do it, how we do it securely. It's a huge amount of work that we don't really want to do it if it can be
Okay.
avoided. Well, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ariane, for this news. And yeah, please open the discussion. Think about writing a blog post. How you write a blog post, you just open a pull request on the website page. If you have any issues, you can ping us on the FluxCD CNCF channel, and Kingdom or me or Mateus, anyone can help you, figuring out where to open the pull request, how to write the blog post. Okay,
Okay. Thank you very much.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, for example, this one, if we can, if the Backstage stuff is looks good, we can include it in the next KubeCon on the Flux ecosystem updates. So far we have two new UIs basically. Is the freelance one. Have you seen that, Kingdom? Looks
Yes,
really good.
I helped fix the carousel. The
Nice,
image
nice.
carousel, yeah.
Yeah. So now Backstage, it's really nice to see more and more visual tools built around Flux. It's what we wanted in the end, not have one UI to rule them all, but many depending on whatever people are using. And yeah, in some Backstage has a huge user base, right? It's they will not just use Headlamp or freelance because to see Flux things. They want it in their own platform. So having a plugin there, it's really great. Okay, any other topics? I have 3 more minutes, especially for me. Mateus, do you have anything?
Yeah,
Kingdom?
actually, I have something. So probably won't have time to discuss, but maybe just dropping the context anyway. Um, so I this weekend I managed to like finish implementing uh workload identity for kubeconfig for talking to remote clusters. So I have it working on all the 3 clouds already.
Nice.
I tested this with integration tests. So I started by the integration test this time instead of the unit tests. And so yeah, it's like working end to end and everything. So my concern is in the specific case of object level, is this thing where like we need some permissions for this feature, right? For kubeconfig. The permission is to get the details of the cluster. Literally, like in one of the clauses called describe cluster, the other one is get cluster, the other one is something
Yeah.
like that. So we need that permission, and I triple checked each one to see if it could give us escalation privileges. Like, does it give me an admin kube config, right? No, fortunately it doesn't, right? AWS is totally safe. Like, you need a tiny permission to call only one endpoint. That endpoint doesn't give you any credentials, anything. It just gives you the endpoint of the cluster and the CA, which is what I need. That's why I need this to call this endpoint anyway, just to get these two informations. And Azure only gives you an admin kubeconfig if the cluster is not integrated with Microsoft Enter ID. But we can only, this feature is only for clusters integrated with Microsoft Enter ID, because we want temporary credentials associated with an identity of the cloud. So the cluster has to be integrated. And in this case, the kubeconfig returned in the endpoint I call is one that depends on the user. Like, it's the exact plugin thing, right? So I really just pick the server address and the CA from that and discard the whole thing. Just build the kubeconfig with the token from the identity, so it's safe. And Google has basic auth and a
I
cert.
I don't have time anymore, man. I mean,
Okay.
this is a very long discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
This is not a 3 minutes discussion. Come on, we can do it another time. Sorry.
Okay. Next week then.
Yeah. No, next week I'm in London.
Okay.
We'll see.
The meeting is
can,
recorded though, so if you want to keep talking,
Oh yeah, I can watch the meeting. I need to go. Bye, guys. Bye.
Right. Well, I guess. Right.
it's probably
guess I'll
you're looking
finish.
for immediate feedback, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Like, okay. I guess I'll finish the explanation and we'll discuss this at some point. So the thing is, my concern was like if you could somehow escalate privileges by calling this endpoint, and you can't. Like, I checked thoroughly for each cloud provider. This neither the endpoint itself gives you something you can use to impersonate an admin inside the cluster, neither the permission to call like a different endpoint, one that gives you that information. That's not the case either. Neither the API itself, neither like the permission you need to for calling it. So it's okay. But my concern is like with object level workload identity, um we we create source accounts inside the tenant namespace, and the tenant supposedly can like create a pod inside that namespace to use the source account, including the permissions, the cloud permissions that are associated with that source account.
The tenant admin.
Yeah, like,
This actually was in the latest release of Cozy Stack. There's a very similar CVE. I don't know if they're doing CVEs yet, but um, this just dropped yesterday. I'll put a link to the release notes here. I'm not sure if this is close to what you're talking about. Under the security heading. Allow tenant administrator to gain enhanced privileges outside the tenant. Cozy Stack has Flux in it, but it's not using Flux multi-tenancy as far as I'm aware. But you can
so
turn it on if you have to.
so 32 is where you fixed it, or
I've just read the release notes and installed it. I haven't been involved in the development at all. So
Okay, security resolve security problem follow time which again and has it resolved outside the town.
it's a dashboard issue for Cozy Stack. There's a Cube Apps dashboard that's based on, I don't know where Cube Apps comes from originally, but it's a heavily modified Cube Apps that has like OpenShift console bits in it, and it's the OIDC entry point for tenants who are not using Cube CTL API.
Well, I'll take a look at this Cozy Stack CV
And anyway,
later then.
they've built their own Cozy Stack API as a Kubernetes API extension, so there's no risk that they're initially when they built this, they would give you direct access to the Helm releases, and they realized quickly how bad that would be. So they wrap all of their Cozy Stack applications with generated API that looks for Helm releases with the right labels on them, and they become an API endpoint of their own that the Cozy Stack API controller can adjudicate access and prevent you from doing bad things. So it's definitely not an issue in Flux that they have had, but for threat modeling, it
So
might be interesting to you.
yeah. So my concern is that now that we have object level workload identity, the source account lives on the tenant's namespace, right? It's like you create an OCI repository object, you have source account name. It's just a name because the namespace is implied to be on the same namespace as the OCI repository object. So if you do workload identity with that source account, then that source account, if it's used in a pod in that same namespace, you yeah, like if you can spin up a pod in that namespace using that source account, you can use the permissions, the cloud permissions associated with, right? And that's what's a bit concerning. Like, as a cluster administrator, I want to allow tenants to have their own source accounts and permissions for their Flux resources, but not necessarily I want them to allow to use those permissions. That actually depends. Like some cluster admins would say, okay, no, like cloud identities for tenants belong entirely to tenants. A tenant that can spin up a pod in their namespace and use the cloud identity to do whatever it can with the permissions it has, it's okay. Other cluster administrators could say otherwise, right? Like, no, you,
So the binding is at
you
the service account level is the problem, and anybody in the namespace can access the service account. You don't have like is there I'm not super familiar with IAM across clouds, but I know um, some of the
you
terms
mean
like pod
across different
identity.
clouds or just
Yeah,
workload in
just
general?
generally, your the workload identity is Azure, right?
It's all three. I mean,
All three.
in the
Okay.
name is workload identity in Azure and Google, but the concept is the same and exists as a feature in all three of them. So essentially, what you do is, you like you annotate the source account with the identity that you want to that source account to impersonate, and on the cloud side, you allow the source account to impersonate the identity. So it's like a double
Yeah,
link where you point from here, and then it's
but the
allowed.
point from here points at the service account, not at a particular pod identity. So if you like, there's no pod identity. It's just a pod. You can create any pod you want. If you have access to create pods in the namespace, that's RBAC. But
But in the spec of the pod, right? You can do spec dot source account name, and
mhm.
then you put there So imagine in this namespace, you have these service accounts that are linked to a cloud identity that you use with Flux. In the same namespace, you spin up a pod using that service account. That pod will be able to use the cloud identity permissions that are linked to the service account,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, so the way I would handle this in my environment, and I haven't had to handle this yet, so I'm talking out of my a little bit, is a tenant isn't just one namespace. When you have a tenant, you have a root tenant namespace where the dev team is hosting all of their, say, Flux resources, and then all of the lesser privileged accesses go into application namespaces that also belong to the tenant, that the
Mm,
tenant service account can bind.
yeah, yeah, that's one thing you can do. Another thing that Lee suggested was using like something like Caverno to restrict which service accounts can be used in pods, for example. Another option, right? Like we just want to say, oh, if or like to have a block list where you say these cannot be used in a pod.
Some sort of regular expression matching that says the service
Yeah,
name has to have the same prefix as the pod.
yeah, yeah, something like that. But as a built-in feature in Flux to make this better, one thing I thought was having a controller level flag, like a binary flag in the controller. It's called object level workload identity namespace. And that would be used to, if it's set, it's used to replace the namespace of the service account. So instead of the controller, instead of assuming the namespace of the service account as the same of the object that references the name of the service account, it uses this flag for everything. So it's a we centralize all the service accounts used by Flux in a single namespace. And also in order to isolate them to prevent a tenant from using the service account of another tenant, we prefix the names of the service accounts with the namespace. So let's say you have OCI repository in the tenant namespace. It uses the source account called OCI repo or something. Then, and the namespace is called tenant. Then instead of using the source account called OCI repo from the namespace tenant, the source account used is actually from the namespace of this binary flag. And the name is tenant dash OCI repo or something. And this way, like the tenant, like the namespace of the source accounts used by Flux actually belongs to the cluster admin, not to the tenants. It's just one, and all the source accounts are there. I don't know, it's kind of weird experience for users, like totally crazy. I think like what you said is probably better, like splitting into namespaces or like the
It's
policy
hard to
thing.
solve this problem from within Flux because the service account is um, not a part of the Flux object tree. So, uh, like, how do you? Maybe there's something I didn't understand, but how can you prevent an arbitrary pod from connecting and using the cloud credentials? That
It's in another namespace, right? The tenant
yes,
only
yeah, exactly.
like
That's the only way. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's what that was my conclusion. Like the only way to prevent the tenant from using the source account is making the source account go to another namespace. It's the only way. But well, like I was more concerned about this kind of thing if we shipped kube config workload identity in a way that people can get privilege escalation. But I am not so concerned anymore about from this perspective of like kube config workload identity because I triple checked all the APIs and permissions. You cannot get cluster admin by simply calling the describe cluster endpoint of the cloud. Like it doesn't give you, except in Google, where you can actually have a static basic auth authentication, but that's obviously deprecated and removed in GKE 1.19 plus. So that's not even a real concern anymore, like basic auth. There's also a certificate, like a static certificate. Neither of these identities have some sort of initial RBAC in the cluster. Like it's just an identity that you can assume inside the cluster, but they're not admin. Only if you grant admin or cluster admin or whatever to these identities. So it's not even admin by default. And we can simply just error out if those things exist for the cluster. Like I do get describe cluster in GKE, and then okay, the result says it has basic auth and client configured, or just one of them. I'll just error out and not allow this with Flux to incentivize people not to create a service account or a cloud identity that gives you access to a cluster for which you can escalate privilege through these old and unsecure mechanisms, right? No, if your cluster has a static basic auth or client, no, you can't use this feature with Flux. Just literally like just block it.
Certainly sounds like you thought this through.
Yeah, so I'm not so concerned anymore from this perspective. I think I'm okay shipping this feature without any built-in features in Flux to prevent that kind of escalation path. But I wanted to open an issue at least, maybe like just to track this, like a built-in way to prevent tenants from using the cloud identities that were assigned to their Flux objects. That's it.
Cool.
Yep. Well, that's it from me. Does anybody else have any other topics? Rohan, him, Augie?
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, I am a new open source contributor and I was looking around CNCF to probably see some projects that I can contribute and thought of joining some meets to directly hear from the devs. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Oh, so you want to contribute with Flux?
Yeah, sure. That's why I'm here. I'm looking around the
Nice.
projects. I am thinking of contributing starting next month. But yeah, I'm looking around just now.
So in the CNCF Slack, there's a channel called Flux Contributors.
Yeah, I've joined that.
Yeah. And if you see the last post there, it's from me. I just posted an issue with like some small things we need to do for the next minor release of Flux 2.7. If you want to take a look there, all help is appreciated.
Yeah, sure. I would take a look. I am also trying to contribute to some meaningful open source projects and it is a very good project. So yeah, I'm up for it. Thanks.
Cool, cool. So just take a look at the last thread in Flux Contributors. the channel.
Okay.
We also have a high traffic Flux channel, but the Flux contributors channel is low traffic to keep down the number of threads so that we can
Yeah,
help
Flux
people
is
find
more
things.
like, yeah, like Flux is more support requests. But if you're looking for contribution discussion, like development, the channel is Flux contributors.
Yeah, sure. I'll take
Yeah.
a look. Thanks for the help.
Cool.
This is probably my first meet for CNCF, and it's really good. Thanks.
Cool, welcome.
Cool. Okay. So maybe Augie, do you have anything?
No, I don't. I don't. I'm busy getting my Captain and Flux demos together. They need to be up and running by the end of the month because then I need to show them to Deutsche Telekom and Viavi. Once it's up and running, I'd be happy to show to you guys also.
Cool.
Cool.
We have the Flux Bug Scrub, which is a great forum for, we've done a few times where if you want to have a recorded presentation that's just the focus of the whole meeting, we can put it on the calendar and make sure that we record that day.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll let you know
Or you're welcome
ahead
to
of
bring it
time.
back here to the dev meeting where there's more people.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so if there's no other topics, then I guess we'll close the meeting for today.
All right.
Well, I have one doubt. If you can please clarify. Is this a weekly meet?
Yes, I can share the calendar link here.
Sure.
There is on the fluxcd.io/community page, there's meetings. This is the long calendar that has a longer view than the next 2 weeks. Goes out for a month. This just pulls directly from the CNCF Flux Dev calendar on the lists. Here, this is
Okay.
where, if you want to subscribe, this is where you go. There's further down in
Yeah.
the community page, there's instructions for how to get this on your calendar. It's a little bit obscure because Google Calendar sharing is kind of funky, and it doesn't always update on time if we have
Yeah. I've seen
something
that.
down. But all the instructions are there. So welcome to join us for the next meeting, and thanks
Yeah,
everyone.
sure. I'll try to do some meaningful contributions and probably talk to you about that in next meet. Thanks.
Cool.